Okay, today I have with me Representative Scott Perry to go over some of the biggest news stories out there right now. Congressman, I read on the Daily Mail that White House photographer Chandler West is blowing the whistle. He's saying that he has personally witnessed Joe Biden falling asleep during meetings, unable to remember foreign dignitaries' names, what they're working on. With it now coming to light that Joe Biden is struggling with mental issues, memory issues, do you think that the Democrats are going to drop him? Are they going to carry his dead weight to the election? What are your thoughts on this new revelation of his mental status?
Well, first of all, let me say this is really sad. It's sad for the individual. Obviously, we've watched President Biden, Joe Biden, in some sort of physical decline that, we're all going to get older someday, right? So that's sad in its own right. And it unfortunately, it projects weakness on behalf of the United States to our enemies who are also watching. For the photographer, I'm not familiar with the story. I don't know how long he's been the photographer, but let me just say this. When I watched the debate, I came away with, okay, well, that's Joe Biden. That's the Joe Biden we've known for 3.5 years. We knew he was going to be this way. Nothing new. The photographer, I think, is kind of jumping on the bandwagon with now the mainstream media and the bulk of the Democrat Party who have, let's face it, been covering for Joe Biden for the last 3.5 years. But he was now suddenly out in public, unscripted. What we've been watching for 3.5 years on mainstream media is the Truman Show starring Joe Biden. But then suddenly he was out on his own, and the whole world got to see what many of us already knew. And so I think these folks are all scrambling for their own credibility, knowing that they've been part of one of the greatest, the largest, and the most nefarious cover-ups in United States history at the highest level. What do they do from here? Look, they're in a box because what they want to do, one of their major threads of running against Republicans and especially President Trump is that Republicans and President Trump are trying and have tried to destroy democracy. At the very same moment, now that the bulk of the primaries are done and all of the Democrats have voted for Joe Biden, they're going to try and somehow say, no, look, you can't have Joe Biden, the person that you voted for in this democratic process. We in the Star Chamber are going to decide who your nominee is. And of course, what's their choice? Well, obvious choice is Vice President Kamala Harris. Oh, by the way, who's been part of the cover-up. She's probably the closest one to the cover-up. So how could she possibly be qualified? She's been lying to the American people for the last 3.5 years, just like everybody else.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. I didn't consider the fact that I've been so focused on, is she capable? Does she have the skill set? Does she have the charm? Does she have the boldness? It didn't cross my mind that she's actually right there, front and center to this cover up to the American people. Now, you and I have known that he has been going downhill, but I think a lot of Democrats, especially the CNN debate, really opened their eyes. I want to switch gears to election stuff.
Sure.
In the state of Pennsylvania, 3 years after the election, a judge finally rules, wait a minute, there was nearly 100,000 ballots that should have been thrown out because of bad dates, no dates, accepting them after the election. Now, Hillary Clinton's lawyer, Marc Elias, he just had a huge win in Wisconsin where they get to reinstitute these unmanned, unwatched ballot boxes. Are we going to see another ballot box stuffing operation in the state of Wisconsin?
Well, in my mind, there's only one reason to have these unmanned and unwatched. And quite honestly, if you really think about it, it doesn't matter if they're watched or not, ballot boxes. And I would say this, if you need to go to a ballot box and put your ballot in, you probably have to go no further than the end of your driveway or outside your door. It's called your post office box where you receive your mail. You don't need to have one of these centralized locations spread around the county where you can drop these things off. You can literally do it lawfully, in the mailbox. The only reason to have these things is to offer an opportunity for ballot box stuffing. And let me just say this. The reason it's so important to get elections right on the front side is because there is no remedy on the back side. So let's say we have a ballot box out there and it's cameraed. There's a 24-hour camera on it, and we watch people stuffing the ballots in there, and we know that they're breaking the law. But what judge is going to say, well, none of those ballots in that box are good because some of them are tainted? Judges always say, well, we don't know which ones are good and which ones are bad, so we have to accept them all. The left knows this. This is exactly why they do this. And the real question in voters' minds should be, why did we need any of these things? If you can use the U.S. Postal Service, you don't have to drive anywhere. If you already get your mail, just go there, which is generally speaking for most people at the end of the driveway, at the end of the street, or literally hooked onto their home. That's your ballot box. Just put it in the mail and put it there if that's what you want to do. Let's face it, there is no reason, there's no practical, actual reason to have these ballot boxes around counties and around the state other than for nefarious activity.
Yeah. You brought up another really great point. This is why I like having you on the show, is the remedy has to be on the front end.
Yeah.
Because even on the back end, for example, with Pennsylvania,
yeah.
And the dates, now Georgia just announced huge changes to their election after it came out that 380,761 ballot images completely disappeared. They either never existed or they deleted them so that we're not able to see that. This was a huge change. Did you want to say something?
Well, what I want to say is, of course, and it's 3 years after the fact, or it's after the fact anyhow. In the meantime, everybody that had any question, including President Trump, including me, who had objections on the floor pending an investigation, all backed up by facts that could not be refuted. These are facts these are things that occurred, like you said, votes that occurred after the election was over, some ballot signs, some not, disparate treatment, all that kind of thing. You're called an election denier. But when all these things come to light after the fact, there's no one to come to you and say, you know what, we're sorry, we didn't realize this was true, and you're not an election denier. Nobody ever says that. Nobody ever apologizes. There's no office that you can go to get your reputation back for questioning the facts that happen. And that's why elections must be tightened up on the front end, because there literally is no remedy on the back end.
Yeah, that's a good point. There's no apology. You deserve one, but my apology means nothing, because I think that you were correct in fighting. But instead, I will say thank you on behalf of the American people for fighting. I know that they've drug you through the mud, calling you horrible names, accusing you of things, and yet all you've done is stood up for truth. And then what's happened? Years later, it turns out that you were correct, and the fight you were fighting should have been fought by more Republicans and even Democrats that should want a free and fair election. Speaking of Republicans and Democrats on the election, just yesterday, President Biden said that if by some miracle House representatives are able to get the SAVE Act across the finish line, that he is going to veto it, because part of democracy is that everybody gets the right to vote. I mean, he basically just said we would love to have tens of millions of illegals voting in an American election. This is very scary to me, that we may actually have a president elected by people that don't live here, that aren't legal citizens, for possibly the first time in American history.
So it tells you everything to know. The SAVE Act is nothing more than saying that the people that decide the course of the country, who leads the country, the fate of the country, should be the people rightfully here as American citizens. And at the same time, when we've made the claims that that Joe Biden and the Democrats and the left in general have wanted all these people to come in illegally so that they could get them voting, you get claims of racism and of suppression of the vote, and you're evil, and you're ethnocentric or egocentric, all those kind of things, right? But this lays bare the fact that they brought all these people, welcomed them in, shipped them into the country illegally for the purpose of voting. What other reason would you have to want to veto this bill, which just says that only citizens, you must provide proof of citizenship to vote? And so I think it lays bare the actual motivation for bringing. People say, well, why do they want to bring they certainly don't want to bring criminals and terrorists into the country. They wouldn't want to do that. That's the price of doing business, to to essentially take your vote and nullify it with people that don't want to be Americans but want to be in America, when we know that NGOs are literally signing up these people, registering them to vote, but they know it's illegal for them to vote. Why would they do that? It's because they want them to vote. Why would they give them driver's licenses in states like Pennsylvania and Illinois, where motor voter is part of the program? It's because they not only want them driving, what they really want them to do is vote. And I would say this, even if they're not voting, they want those ballots available to put in those ballot boxes. It is very clear, and that's how everybody should see it, whether you're on the left or the right. And I will say this, even if you're on the left, sooner or later the tables are going to turn, and this is going to work against you. It was only a few short years ago that Democrats were claiming these elections were stolen. As a matter of fact, they called President Trump in 2016 an illegitimate president who stole the election. Yet they're not willing to do anything about it to remedy the situation as long as their person's winning. But we should all want citizens voting. That's who decides the course of the country, not some person that came from Russia or China deciding the fate of the country or the leadership of the country.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we have a hard out. I just want to say thank you so much for everything that you're doing. Please continue to fight for the border, continue to fight for election integrity, continue to fight for the truth to come out. It is coming out. Now, will the Democrats wake up and see, wait a minute, you've been part of a psyop that has made you believe that we have a healthy sitting president when in fact we don't. Any final words you want to leave us with?
Yeah, I don't know how many more lies the American people need to be told by this federal government and the various agencies to start being skeptical, whether it was the Russia-Trump collusion, whether it was the pandemic, whether it was the vaccine will keep you from getting COVID-19, or whether Joe Biden or the economy is in perfect shape and doing well. I don't know how much more you need to just be skeptical. That's all I'm saying. You can make your own decision, but be skeptical and don't use the government as your only source of information because, oh, by the way, many people in government have a bias and they wish to color your thinking. So just be skeptical, answer your own questions. American people are smart. As long as they do the investigation, they'll get the information. They can make good decisions.
Great. I love that. Love your country. Be skeptical of your government.
Yes.
Congressman, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. God bless you. Appreciate the opportunity.